I'm going to go over the background and the regulations section of our presentation. The PHA plan process was established by Section 5A of the United States Housing Act of 1937. Section 5AB of the Act was amended in 2008 by the Housing and Economic Recovery Act, also known as HERA. Now, sections 2701 and 2702 of the Small Public Housing Authorities Paperwork Reduction Act included an amendment that provided an exemption of certain qualified PHAs from the annual plan requirement. The governing regulation for PHA plans is 24 CFR Part 903. Now, if you are interested in other requirements of your PHA plan, such as 903.6, that covers the required elements for the 5-year plan, and then the required elements for the annual plans are covered in 24 CFR 903.7. Now, there's a public comment section of the PHA plan that is covered in 24 CFR 903.17. So there was a notice issued back in April, May timeframe. It was the PIH notice 2020-05 that contains information on the COVID-19 statutory and regulatory waivers for public housing and other programs. So basically what that is just we've changed some of the due dates on your plans. So in a nutshell, nothing is due till 10/18/2020. And we'll go over this, I believe, in the next slide. I think we cover more of that in the next few slides. So let's go over a PHA plan overview. So the PHA plan is a comprehensive guide to PHA policies, programs, operations, strategies for meeting local needs and goals. There are two types of PHA plans. Again, as we said earlier, there's the annual plan and the 5-year plan. The PHA process is designed to provide a method for the local community to actively participate in decisions that directly impact local public housing and HCV programs. This helps ensure local accountability. Another key component of the process is to engage in the agency's public housing residents and housing choice voucher families. This is done through the Resident Advisory Board, or otherwise known as RABs, RAB. The RABs helps ensure program participants have a meaningful opportunity to participate in decisions that directly impact a PHA's public housing and HCV program. Once completed, PHA plans are submitted to the field office for review and approval. As we said earlier, there's a 5-year plan and an annual plan. What we have here is a snapshot of the comparisons of both plans. So as you can see that the annual plan is much more detailed than the 5-year plan. You'll see that the annual plan captures the public housing agency's local policies for administration of its public housing and housing choice voucher programs. This may include selection policies, grievance procedures, demo dispo actions, which include RAD, designated housing plans, pet policies, and a whole lot more. Two types of PHA plans under 24 CFR 903.4 is the regulation that covers or defines the two different plans. Okay, so there are different templates for PHAs to complete. The annual plan template depends on the type of the PHA. The annual plan templates are submitted by non-qualified PHAs. So I want to make note that the 5-year plan is the HUD 50075-5Y. The 5Y stands for 5-year. The 75 says, okay, this is the plan template that's because we'll talk about a little bit about what the 7.7s mean in a little bit, but in short, it just means that every PHA has to submit a 5-year plan, and that's the form you use, the HUD 50075-5Y. Now, there's the annual plan templates, and now what we said earlier, Non-qualified PHAs must do an annual plan. So depending on your type of PHA, it will depend on which form you use, and we'll go a little bit over that. So the annual plan templates are submitted by standard, troubled, small, high performing, and Section 8 only PHAs. So there are specific instructions on each of these forms, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Um, I will. I do have to mention that the templates that you can download off our HUD website do have an expiration date on them, and those expirations have passed, but they are the latest. So a good thing, a little good practice to have is go to the website and pull the most current form. I believe some of them are dated 2016, some are dated a little older, but those are the forms that we have now. So I would use the forms that are on our website. You can download a PDF. You can also download a Word version of these forms. So we advise all our PHAs to continue to use these forms until they are superseded, at which time the new versions will be put out. And they'll usually be put out at the website. So the next slide is the PHA 5-year annual plan submission dates due to COVID-19. As I mentioned earlier, the dates have been shifted. So in short, now one of the reasons the dates were shifted, of course, we all know that there were limitations on large public gatherings. So HUD has waived these requirements and provided alternative deadlines for some PHAs. Specifically, HUD has established an alternative requirement under which PHAs with June 30 or September 30 fiscal year end dates, so they must submit their 5-year plan and annual plans no later than 10/18/20. So if you see here, the revised date here, so it's 75 days. You're supposed to submit your plan 75 days before the end of your fiscal year date. So now the PHA plans with the December 31st, 2020 fiscal year end date must submit their 5-year plan and annual plans no later than January 16, 2021. So these due dates are also found in post. So we get a lot of questions when we get calls to our field office and they ask, well, I don't know when my plan is due. I'm really confused. The fiscal year end, 75 days. So there is a website that we have at our HUD.gov website. This is the link to that website. And in short, it does list, when you click on this website, it has a whole list of different types of forms that are due, different reports that are due for different type of whatever the reg requires you to submit, it's in there. So right now, I don't know if you can see my arrow, um, my little cursor. Uh, Here on due date for October 2018, um, October 18, 2020, the 5-year plan is due for for PHAs that have a fiscal year end date of June 30 and 9/30, 2020. So if you notice up on the column, this is a COVID-19 adjusted date. Okay. So that's a little it's a special column that was added because the dates were extended. Also here in the next line, you have the annual plan. And these are for the non-qualified PHAs that must submit a plan every year. Again, the due date is also on October 18, 2020. This is the governing regulation, and we have the forms listed on here as well. I think this is a very helpful website to go to in case you have a question of when your plans are due. The next slide. I use the website a lot because it puts out current information and any changes that might be, happening with forms and such. So this is a good source for people who are interested in, okay, so where am I on PHAs? What is considered a qualified PHA? What is a non-qualified PHA? So it does have additional information in here, more detailed information. You also note that here there is a qualified PHA list. So basically you can click on there and all it does is tell you, it pulls up a long list that shows Um, if you're on the list, you don't have to submit a plan, which is, at least an annual plan. So that is something, a good source that you can go to. So that is something you may want. I will have a link at the end as well for that. So the next two slides are is a sample timeline or slash flow chart of the development and process of the plan. It is important that PHAs begin the planning process several months prior to the due date. One of the most important first steps in the plan development process is for the PHA to establish a schedule for the plan's completion. Because remember, the PHA plan is due 75 days prior to commencement of their fiscal year. Their, their schedule for plan development should begin in sufficient time for the 45-day public review period. The public hearing itself and incorporation of any public comments received on the plan. There should be also ample time to obtain proper signed certifications and board certification. So this is just a simple flow chart to help you develop your plan. You could use that as like a checklist. Have we done this? Have we done that? And so forth. It's just a visual. All this information's in the reg, but what I like about this is it's just like a snapshot of what a PHA has to do to develop their plan. This slide covers it's the next step, which is once the plan is fully developed, the PHA then publishes a notification of a public meeting or hearing not less than 45 days prior to the meeting. The PHA then considers the resident advisory board comments for incorporation into the plan. After the PHA has completed all the steps, they then submit the template, signed forms, and all supporting documentation to their appropriate field office. So again, this is an easy flow chart. It's in picture form to show what all the steps are required as far as the hearing and the public meeting, things that have to be done to complete your submission to HUD to make sure that you meet all the regulations. So the PHA resident community involvement and resident consultation is important when going through the PHA plan process. Now, this is done through the public hearing process and the resident advisory board, which we mentioned earlier is referred to as the RAB. Let's first address the RAB requirement. The RAB is a board of boards whose membership consists of individuals who adequately reflect and represent the residents assisted by the housing authority. The RAB provides the housing authority and the residents a forum for sharing information. The role is to assist and make recommendations regarding the development of the PHA plan and any significant amendment or modifications to the plan. As part of the planning process, PHAs are required to have at least one RAB to assist in the development of the PHA plan or any significant amendments to the plan. So that is the RAB's role. So now we're going to talk about what is a non-qualified and a qualified PHAs. When I first started at HUD, I got so confused with these two distinctions. They were very hard for me to understand. So when I would get a plan, I'd have to read the reg. I had to always go back and read the reg. So basically, I think of the number 550. So in short, a qualified PHA are small PHAs with less than 550 combined public housing units and or housing choice vouchers. They are not designated as troubled in their FOS score, nor do they have a failing CMAP score. If a PHA meets this criteria, they're exempt from submitting an annual plan and do not have to submit one. Okay, so that's the qualified plan. Whereas a non-qualified agency are large agencies with more than 550. It's a combined public housing units and housing choice vouchers, meaning that if a PHA has 551 combined units, they are in the non-qualified category. If a PHA is troubled in FOS or CMAP, they are considered non-qualified. So that means troubled agencies must submit a PHA annual plan. If a PHA falls into the category, they must submit an annual plan, and this is going into the non-qualified. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to go over the 5-year PHA plan submission requirements and the templates that are used to submit your plan. Let me go forward. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. The 5-year plan submission requirements are 2 forms for all agencies. So when we said with the 5-year plan, we said everyone has to submit one, right? Okay, so now that you're figured out that you have to submit one, there are 2 forms. There's the 50075-5Y and then the 5077-SL. So the 5Y is a template for the 5-year plan that covers the PHA's missions, goals, and objectives. Essentially, it is a planning tool for PHAs to design long-range strategies that address their operations and needs. The 50077-SL is a template. It's a certification form. It certifies that the PHA is consistent with the local and/or state consolidated plan. PHAs are strongly encouraged to engage in the collaborative and cooperative efforts with appropriate consolidation plan agencies in developing the PHA plan. So this is an outline of the HUD 50075-5Y, the 5-year plan. The plan must be submitted annually, again, as we said earlier, 75 days before beginning of the PHA fiscal year. These are all the elements that we cover in that form. So we'll be looking at these items. The specific information, well, let's go to the next slide. I believe it breaks it down a little bit more. Here we go. So it's 50075-5Y. It's a 5-year plan. The first section of the form is that you submit is the submission type. This is straightforward. It's the PHA information, the full name, the PHA code, the fiscal year end date, and then whether it's an initial or revised PHA plan submission. There's a box that indicates what type of submission it is. Now, the one key thing to note in this section is the availability of the information. Here, the PHAs must identify where the PHA plan and component units are available for public review. The 5-year plan must provide information on how the public can obtain PHA policies that are components of the annual plan. Generally, all the PHA policies are incorporated by reference into the PHA plan. Common policies might include an admissions and continued occupancy policy or an administrative plan and tenant selection policies. So other information that's included in this section is the AMP, the number of units, the total number of HCV, and then there's a section for public housing, a section for voucher, and then a total combined number. So that way we know what kind of form we should be completing or what we're looking at, qualified, unqualified. We want to make sure the right form is being used. So basically, if everybody has to fill it out, you're just telling us what we're looking at. So part B1 is the mission portion of the form. So basically, this covers the agency's mission for serving the needs of low income, very low income, and extremely low income families in the PHA's jurisdiction for the next 5 years. An agency may have its own mission statement or choose to adopt HUD's mission statement. And down here is the regulation in case you need more information on that. The next section is the goals and objectives. In section B2, a PHA is tasked with measuring its long-range goals and objectives that enable the PHA to serve needs of low-income families in its jurisdiction. To best measure the success of the PHA in meeting its goals and objectives, the PHA must adopt quantifiable goals and objectives for serving those needs whenever possible. Examples of quantifiable goals might include improved FOS or CMAP scores and what those score improvements will look like. It might also include the number of families served in the public housing and or HCV programs, self-sufficiency or home ownership goals, repositioning milestones, growing the number of landlords in the HCV program, or more. The next section is B3, and that is the progress report. So you would include a report on the progress made in the meeting objectives in the previous 5-year plan. Now, this section requires the agencies to include a narrative on the progress the PHA has made in meeting the goals and objectives. So this is not the CFP 5-year action plan, but instead it deals with the progress made on the goals and objectives in the agency's last 5-year plan. So the progress report is an opportunity for an agency to reflect on the past 5 years and reassess. Did the agency meet its goals? If so, what successes or best practices can be incorporated into the 5-year plan? And if the agency did not meet its goals, what can the agency do to do differently in the next 5-year plan cycle, PHA plan cycle? Section B4 is the Violence Against Women's Act goals. The VAWA requires that all 5-year plans contains information regarding the housing needs of survivors of domestic and dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. This should include a statement of the goals, objectives, policies, or programs that will enable the PHA to serve these victims' needs. Instead of a cursory description of activities that serve the survivor's needs, i.e., the Housing Authority has amended its policies to comply with VAWA, the PHA should describe whether or not they have, for example, implemented a training program to train staff on domestic violence or VAWA's provisions. Below our notice is a notice and the regulation regarding VAWA. The significant amendment modification, that is section B5. The PHA must identify the PHA's basic criteria for determining what makes an amendment significant. This is otherwise known as the definition of significant amendment or modification. This is found in section B5 of the template. Significant amendment modifications can only take place after a formal adoption by the PHA Board of Commissioners at an open meeting to the public. They undergo the same review and approval process as a PHA plan, are subject to the 75 review period. Significant amendments are also subject to all of the RAB and public participation requirements discussed previously and are listed in what was previously listed on the other slide. So I hope I didn't lose my place here. Significant amendment or modification. These are examples of what triggers a significant amendment. Unless it's required by regulation or statute, the PHA's own definition or criteria will trigger a significant amendment or modification to the plan. It's important for PHAs to include the element with their PHA plan submissions so you are aware of any action that may trigger a significant amendment or modification. We've listed a few examples here, such as if the target population served shifts or the PHA amends or revises their mission statement or changes to the waiting list or admissions policies were made. Section B6, the RAB. For the RAB requirement, which is section B6 of the template, PHAs must submit an attachment to the comments received from the RAB about the PHA plan and whether those comments were addressed. A narrative must be included describing the PHA's analysis of the recommendations and the decisions made on these recommendations. Once the plan is approved, PHAs must also provide copies of the approved plans to each resident council and RAB. This is covered in Notice PIH 2015-18. The regulation on this requirement is in 24 CFR 903.13C. We have more information on the RAB. Before HUD can approve a plan, any element of the PHA's plan that is challenged by residents or the public without resolution must be reviewed. As with the RAB comments, challenged elements must be submitted with the plan as an attachment to the annual plan or 5-year plan. This is required as is disclosed in Notice PIH 2015-18. The narrative must describe the challenges to the plan elements, the source of the challenge, and the PHA's response. Also, challenges can come from others besides the RAB, say at the public hearing or by anyone interested, like advocates and such. So that could that could come up. So there is a certification. It's the second form that all agencies are required to submit to HUD as part of the 5-year plan cycle is the 50077-SL form. In this form, the state or local official must describe how the plan is consistent with the state or local consolidated plan and be signed by the appropriate state or local official. As you might remember, the consolidated plan is a CPD form that provides a roadmap for how housing and community development funds are spent in communities to address affordable housing and community development needs. So I included a sample of a 500755Y form, and as we mentioned already, each section, this is just a visual of what your form would look like. So this is the first page, section A.1, which provides the PHA information. If you notice here, it does ask, is this a 5-year plan or is this a 5-year plan revision? So, and then also it has a section for if your PHA is part of a consortia. It would ask specifically which is the lead PHA, and then it would ask who is all part of the consortia. This is the meat of the plan. You have the 5-year and then all the sections that we already discussed. These are a sample of some of the things that a PHA has completed. They squeezed in here, if you notice, like in B1, they squeezed in their mission. And then they, like B5 is where there's a significant or amendment modification where they discuss other things that they plan to do, like such as demolition, disposition. Some PHAs, if there's not enough room, they'll send in an attachment, and that's smart. You can do it in the PDF and email it with your plan. We'll take that. Here, section B6 is that section that we talked about earlier. If there are any RAB comments, and include that in your attachment. This tells us whether or not we should look for one. So if there's something there, then we would ask for that. If there's no, then you don't have to worry about that. Just indicate whether or not there were any comments. So now we have the annual PHA submission requirements for non-qualified PHAs. We'll zoom through this because not every PHA has to do this. So remember, we had the qualified list of PHAs that are less than 550, non-troubled, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll zoom through this one. So we have different types of non-qualified PHAs. For example, the 50075 HCV. The HCV stands for Housing Choice Voucher. That is for a PHA that administers more than 550 HCVs and is not designated as troubled in its most recent CMAP assessment and does not own or manage public housing. We have the next one is the 50075 HP, High Performer PHA, is defined as a PHA that owns or manages more than 550 combined public housing units and housing choice vouchers and was designated as a high performer on both the most recent public housing assessment system, which we call FOSS, and the Section 8 management assessment system, which we all know as CMAP. The last one on this slide, it's not the very last one, the 50075 SM, the SM stands for small. It also says on the form, they say streamlined annual PHA plan. So sometimes you'll see that title on the form itself. It's a PHA that owns or manages less than 250 public housing units and any number of vouchers where the total combined unit exceeds 550. It is not designated as FOSS or CMAP troubled or at risk of being designated or troubled. So next slide is the standard PHA or troubled PHA. It's a 50075-ST. That's the form I see the most. This is the standard form. It's a PHA that owns or manages 250 or more public housing units and any number of vouchers where the total combined units exceed 550, and that was designated as a standard performer in the most recent FOSS or CMAP assessments. If you're troubled PHA, you will have to fill out this form. So that's something to remember. If a PHA that achieves an overall FOS score or CMAP score of less than 60% is considered troubled, so they need to send in an annual plan. So this is the form they would use, the 50075-ST, ST for standard. I did a quick, I went into our portfolio and I said, well, what are we looking for as far as numbers? It seems that we have about approximately 139 PHAs total in our San Antonio jurisdiction. 104 qualified, and what that means is 104 PHAs don't even have to submit an annual plan. So they're doing the 5-year plan, but not the annual plan. They're doing 2 other forms, and we'll talk about that later. Now the other, there's 35 PHAs, or 25% of our non-qualified PHAs do have to submit an annual plan. And those 35 PHAs include, some of your big ones, large PHAs. They include HCV or small PHAs that might have been designated troubled, which is this category here. We do have some troubled PHAs that should be submitting an annual plan, but the other ones fall in the other categories. So it's just a snapshot of what we have to do in a field office. So of course, the annual plan information, this is straight from the regulation. These are just examples of everything that's covered in your annual plan. So I don't want to go too much into these. There's more information in the reg, of course, but these are just the areas that the annual plan covers. So briefly, this is a PHA annual plan outline. I kind of like this one because it's kind of like a little checklist to show that, okay, I would use this as a checklist. Okay, did I include a list of new activities? Did I include my civil rights certification, my progress report, any RAB comments? Are you a triple PHA? So we'll cover very quickly each section of the annual plan. So if you're a non-qualified PHA, I would listen up. Okay. So here we go. So the first section of the A1 PHA information, it's very similar to the 5-year plan. It's very straightforward. Same information, more or less. It's like, oh, it's just an initial, is this revised? A lot of stuff is the same as the other forms. Okay, so the revision of the plan elements. So section B1 of this form includes the following areas. Now I'm using the 50075-ST standard template. There are other templates, but since this is a majority of the ones that fall into the annual plan category, I'm using this form. So this form includes the following areas. You would check the yes or no box to indicate whether your PHA has made a revision to any of your PHA plan elements. So it's kind of like a little box of yes or no on the form. So if there was a change, just give us a description of what kind of change was made. You don't have to submit, like there's this change in the pet policy. You don't have to give us the whole pet policy. You just give us a description of what the change was made, the revision that was made. The next slide. Section B2 is the annual plan elements. This is the section that covers new activities. So you would check yes or no in the box to indicate if the PHA plans to undertake any of the listed new activities. And this is new activities in the PHA's current fiscal year. So if there's any revision, any new activities, such as grad or any of these conversion types, this is where you would indicate in that section what all the pertinent information would be included in this section. Excuse me. I have the civil rights certification. Now, as we mentioned earlier, there's a certification for that says it's a form that annually qualified public housing agencies are required to make a civil rights certification. And this is a civil rights certification that's in accordance with the 5A of the Act as amended by HERA. This is the form that needs to be completed. The form 50077-CR is completed again by qualified PHAs, and which are those that do not have to submit an annual plan. Now there's also the 50077 CRTSM for small PHA certification. Now this form is completed by small PHAs. And again, that's a civil rights certification. And then you have the last one that's on this list. It is the PHA certification of compliance with PHA plan and related regulation, including the required civil rights certification. Now, this form is completed by standard, troubled, HCV only, and high performer PHAs. Here's some example. What I did is I took a snapshot of what one of these forms looks like. This is the CR. As you notice on the top, it says this is for the qualified PHAs. This is the form that needs to be submitted. And then this is the 50077 CRTs SM. That is the for small PHAs, the civil rights certification. If you notice, if it ends in a 77, it's pretty much a certification. So you're attesting to something in that form. And then here's the other form that would be completed by the standard, troubled, HCV only, and high performer PHAs. So that's the other required civil rights certification form. So section B4, we would ask, were there any findings? Please describe. And then we're referring to the most recent fiscal year audit. So describe to us if there were any findings. Section B5, we ask that you, if there's any progress that was made on the mission, goals, and objectives, just give us a brief summary on that section. The RAB, the Resident Advisory Board comments. Now, this section is to be completed if the comments were made, and they must be submitted by the PHA as an attachment to the 5-year plan. PHAs must also include a narrative describing their analysis of the RAB recommendations and the decisions made on these recommendations. I see this a lot as separate attachments. Some PHAs will even go as far as to give us the notice for the meetings that they have, and then copies of all the comments that were made. Then there's section B7. B7 is the certification. This is the form where the state or local official must describe how the plan is consistent with the state or local consolidated plan. It must be signed by the appropriate state or local official. So this is the 50077-SL. This is an example of the SL. Here you go, all PHAs. This applies to all PHAs. And non-qualified or qualified, you got to complete this form. It's self-explanatory. Again, send as an attachment with your annual plan. Trouble PHAs, as we mentioned earlier, in section B8, it will specifically ask, are you a troubled PHA, and do you have a current memorandum of agreement or a performance improvement plan or recovery plan in place? It will ask that. Letter C, this is C1 section of the annual plan. Now, even though the CFP has been decoupled from the CFP submission from the PHA plan process, 24 CFR 903.7G requires the PHA provide a statement of capital improvement needs. So in order to comply with this requirement, the PHA must reference the most recent HUD-approved Capital Fund 5-year action plan. PHAs can reference the form in this section. You can write, our latest CFP 5-year action plan HUD 50075.2 was approved by HUD on whatever date it was approved on. Now, CFP is not done in Epic, so Epic does generate the form for you. It does generate a hard copy, but you don't have to attach it to the plan. So that's just a little bit, a tidbit there. This is the annual plan. Again, as we mentioned, this is the 50075-ST, the most common template that's submitted. If you notice here, we'll have for the name, it'll ask for your size, the number of public housing units, HCVs for total combined, what type of submission this is, and if there's any consortia information, you want to include that on the first section, section 8.1. And then this is the component, the elements, as we mentioned earlier, you would designate whether or not there was a revision, and then there's B2, any new activities. In this sample, section B2, since there's no room to include information, it was added here. So you can do that. Or what I see a lot of people do is just in an attachment. This is what we plan to do. like any repositioning goals that might be happening or planned, they will include that in that area. So now the PHA plan can amend or modify a plan. You submit a 5-year plan where you're saying, well, a lot of things have changed. We're shifting goals. We're doing things. So there is a regulation, 903.21, 24 CFR, shows that you can amend or modify your PHA policy, rule, regulation, uh, if the amendment or modification is a significant amendment or modification as defined in 903.7R2. That is where you would refer um, to if you had a question about the significant amendment. I went too far. Okay, may HUD request additional information in the annual plan? Yes, we said we can. If this regulation of 903, 24 CFR 903.9 says that yes, HUD may request that a PHA that is at risk of being designated as troubled or is designated as troubled in accordance with Section 6J2 of the 1937 Act. Uh, in VARs, yes, we can ask for more information. So we would we normally do that, in writing. I don't know if you ever have a question on this. You can contact your PMS, and you may say, well, why are you asking for more information on my plan? And we'll say, well, because blah blah blah. You're in a recovery plan, and we want to know more information about any capital improvements, any repositioning, blah blah blah. So that's something that we could ask for. So uh, there are several reasons why a PHA plan might be approved or disapproved, but basically, if your plan has contain all the information is required, and the information provided as part of the PHA plan is consistent with the data on record at HUD, and the information provided as part of the PHA plan prohibited or inconsistent with QHWRA, the U.S. Housing Act of 1937, or any applicable federal law. These are the questions that we ask ourselves when we're looking at your plan. Is it complete? Is it consistent? And is it compliant? Does it comply with all the regulations that we mentioned earlier? Remember, the governing regulation is 903, 224 CFR 903. So can we disapprove a plan? Yes. Usually when I see there's something missing with the PHA plan, I usually contact the PHA and ask, hey, I didn't see anything on VAWA, or I didn't see, there's something not, you said you made a revision, but you didn't tell us what it was. I'll send the PHA an email, or I'll call. I like to put things in an email in writing, because if I have to disapprove a plan, I'd have that I did request it and it was not submitted. So some of the reasons we would disapprove a plan is because number one, it says here the plan does not provide all the information that's required to be included in the PHA plan. It's not consistent with the information and data available to HUD. It's not consistent with any applicable consolidated plan for the jurisdiction in which the PHA is located. The civil rights certification was incomplete. Sometimes we don't get them. The RAB comments are not included. You say there was comments, but they were not included, or it's not consistent with the applicable federal laws and regulations. So these are some of the reasons. There are other reasons, but this is just a small list of reasons. So some of the key resources I used were, we had a public notice 2015-18 that I referred to. The PHA plan website that HUD has is very, very good. It has a lot of good information, a lot of detailed information, which I found useful. The post website, again, as we mentioned earlier, it provides a list of all your when your PHA is due, depending on the end of your fiscal year. It has the due date. It's like a calendar. And you could probably use it for other things, which is pretty interesting. I liked it because it specifically said if your PHA has a fiscal year ending of 9/30, blah, 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 your plan is due on this date, which I found that very useful. And then there's also the SOS, which is also, it's got additional information you might need. And then there's a PHA plan desk guide. It's what they call a legacy document. It is kind kind of outdated, but it does offer some interesting information, more of a more background information. So, and it does give some explanations and understanding of the intent of the PHA plan. Uh, so, let's see. Do we all have any questions? Ashley, I think I'm done. I hope I didn't go over on my
No, not
time.
at all.
Oh,
We
okay.
do have a question in the chat from Brandy. It says, if something was not listed in the annual plan, can you still do it? I.e., choice neighborhoods, NOFA came out. Could we apply for this grant even though it wasn't listed in our annual plan?
Oh, yeah, you can add it. You so you're asking if there's something that you're doing or participating in, but it's not in the list of the form itself. Is that what?
Brandy, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi there. Yes, so I know that the city had Cento or something, which I saw the NOFA and the information about choice neighborhoods, and we have some new city leaders. So one of their members had sent something over asking if we saw it, if we were interested, or anything like that, and it was regarding choice neighborhoods. It's not something that we had discussed, at our agency or in any board meeting or anything like that. Kind of wasn't on my radar per se as the ED. So I was just kind of curious if it wasn't something listed that we may look into doing or possibly do. If it's not listed anywhere in any of our plans, is that something we can still do? Or if so, what is required, or do we have to update this plan, or how does that work exactly?
Uh, so are you non-qualified? Are you talking about the 5-year plan or the annual plan?
Either or, it's not listed in any of the plans. And I have to fill out all the forms. I'm one of your 19 properties or agencies, I should say, there in San Antonio on your list for the standard form. So it's not been listed anywhere. And I've only been at the agency for 4 years. So I have never put it on anything I've done, and it's not listed in the 5-year plan that I have. So
Okay.
how do I
I
go
would
about doing
you
that, or what would be proper?
now I would you could add it. It's like adding making a modification, but what I could do is if you email me, I could double check with our SME. I forgot to mention Ed Allard is our what we call our subject matter expert on PHA plans. I could follow up with him or maybe headquarters to find out what exactly you need to do on that.
Okay.
So if you can send it to me in an email form, and
Sure.
I like to find out myself so I can include it in another slide, future training. That's
Sure.
good to
That
know.
sounds good. Okay. I'll send
Thank
over
you.